The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Greetings, Flesh Wound After Dark fans, and welcome to another Black Emanuelle special. We've been slowly working our way through the stacked Severin Sensual World of Black Emanuelle box set, and we've reached kind of an interesting period now where we're into the Mondo films. So, not maybe arguably not Black Emanuelle films so much, but they still count. Some people still put them under there, and she is still Emanuelle. So
Even
I feel
she's not Emanuelle, well, they still count. So
yes,
goes both ways.
yes, absolutely, and yeah. So we will kick this one off with our first film from 1977, and these are pretty cool because these are co-directed by Bruno Mattei. Yeah.
You want to kind of go. I don't know if you already have it down in your notes, but to those who don't know what a Mondo movie is, you want to kind of just give a brief little.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Mondo films were essentially, it's a long history. A lot of you might be aware of the Nudie Cutie, which was essentially a way for filmmakers to get away from the set, pull one over on the censors as far as having nudity. So you'd have like these nature documentaries, these nudist camp films. A lot of them are very, very similar. Of course, Doris Wishman was known for those, and so Mondo films, under the guise of a documentary, would be able to show you certain things that you otherwise maybe couldn't get away with in the same way. This was a bigger issue for the Nudie Cuties, though, because at that point, like, there was some stuff you were flat out banned from showing, but Mondo's had a clever way of getting around it. Of course, Mondo Kane, which I think we might have talked about.
I was going to say that was my introduction to Mondo movies, Mondo Kane.
Yeah, and there is a really good documentary that runs 43 minutes on here called Naked Eye, Sex and the Mondo Film with film historians Mark Goodall, who wrote a book called Sweet and Savage that has a lot of great info on the Mondo, and Elizabeth Purcell. And they kind of run it down. I mean, they're essentially
Africa. What was it? Africa Unchained was another really notorious one. Africa, I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah, and they were used to sneak in questionable content. A lot of them have their roots a long time ago in some of the early scare flicks,
pseudo documentary segments. I mean, I would argue that the Faces of Death movie were essentially Mondo movies. The whole Faces of Death series.
Yeah. I consider it my first Mondo film. I mean, because before I even knew what it was, it'd be Faces of Death.
Yeah, well, I saw Faces of Death before I knew what a Mondo movie was.
Yeah, and they run down some of the early precursors to Mondo films, like 1955's Mau Mau from director Elwood Price. They were films exploring cultures that were outside of the Western world. Quite frankly, one of the main things was to show naked native girls, was like really kind of what they were going for. And if you're interested in early exploitation, directors Dwayne Esper and Kroger Babb, that goes long time ago, but they kind of, the Mondo film has very early roots in a lot of those scare films and the nudist camp films that predated them. burlesque movies, the nightclub films with Betty Page. It all kind of segues into the Mondo, and well, you can talk a little bit more about that later.
Thanks for that one sentence description of what a Mondo film is.
It's complicated. It's a little complicated.
That was for people who didn't know. So
naked native girls, and
it doesn't have to be natives, just naked girls doing
rituals. Yeah.
Well, not even rituals. I mean, half of these are just stripteases for the sake.
Yeah. And we'll get right into it. Porto Knights of the World. So obviously not much of a synopsis on this, but this is a Mondo where Emanuelle introduces segments that include Beauty and the Beast of sorts. We get the Parade of Breasts was one segment. Erotic mud wrestling. Sex jugglers. All sorts of crazy shit. She introduces, I think we open it up in Hamburg, where we have a woman in a club that gets fucked by a giant Sasquatch.
Who's her husband, who she keeps very keen to point out they're a married couple during her voice. Emanuelle really leans into that in her description.
It's actually funny too, because you can see like his boxers as the suit's opening up when he's like banging the girl, which is just hilarious. And more stuff. I mean, it's not really, they're not really actually doing it, but nonetheless, there's more. That was a theme for some reason at this point.
I have to say that it was quite tame for me compared to other Joe D'Amato, films with the elements like the Caligula one where there is actually fellatio, real fellatio just right there on a table, like on Amazon fucking Prime. I was like, wow, she's actually really sucking a real well, I never.
Yeah, that was something that I think maybe not enough people have complained yet, and you're lucky to still have it on Amazon.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still there. But that was the first time I saw it was on Amazon. I was actually surprised to see a Joe D'Amato movie. I'd never heard of it, and I never heard of that movie before. I was very pleasantly surprised. It's a good movie. But Joe D'Amato standards, coherent, good plot,
Yeah, these are really like the very end of Mondo, because Mondo really started to go out of style a long time before this, but this was towards the end. Joe D'Amato did another one called Crazy Nights that just came to Blu-ray from Full Moon, actually, I believe.
Wow.
Put that one out, so... some of it's light, like we get nude roller skating. So it's
very mixed. I was going to say it's a very mixed bag. Like some of the sequences are very light. There's like like the nude roller skating.
Mm-hmm.
I think people might be a little disappointed if they're expecting more like Emanuelle in America. Where there's some real hard stuff.
Yeah, for sure. This is not a gore film by any means. There's a sequence where a magician gives a lady a penis, and it's like the worst prosthetic makeup job on the dick. Maybe that's just the Blu-ray.
I love when the penis flies out. They have a penis on a wire, the flying penis that comes flying out on a wire. Very funny. And he makes all those people's clothes disappear, the magician too. There's just no attempt at realism. It's just making people's clothes disappear and appear again in evening dress. And
actually, any of the gore in this, it kind of feels more tacked on because they thought they needed it. Because there's like a brief like tribal castration thing.
Is that in this one or the second one?
That's in this one, and these are hard to keep together.
Did you notice that tribal castration scene is the tribal castration scene from Emanuelle and the Cannibals? He shows it to her. It is because I literally watched them both today. Like literally
awesome.
one today. I mean, I've seen the Canon many times, but I watched them both today. It's exactly the same scene, the same shots, but in the Mondo movie, it's very clear. It's all in color, right? In the Emanuelle and the Cannibals, they've got it in black and white because it's meant to be old cine footage. But yeah, it's the identical footage. It's the same woman getting her head cut off and her eyeballs eaten, and it's the exact same castration scene. It's just the same footage. It's just the same footage as Joe D'Amato was wont to do, you know.
It works. The rest
he
of
probably
this,
never dreamt people would be watching all his movies one after the other and talking about them. He never dreamt this would happen, so he probably felt free to just use footage in another one. No one's ever going to notice, you know.
He didn't anticipate a big box set for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of these movies have a lot of crossover. I mean, you get the girl shooting ping pong balls out of her vagina, which is a popular act actually at a lot of these places. So it's a thing.
Yeah, I've seen it done better actually. I have to say, I've seen them more better ping pong firing. I was a little disappointed by that. I feel it was fake actually. I'm not even sure if it was entirely real because some of the ping pong balls look like they're coming from between her thighs, you know.
He had to put I think somewhere on the extras he said he had to attach a string to make it work. So and there's women in Thailand who can fire a ping pong ball out of a bar, a glass someone's holding 20 feet away. It's
so I hear.
I can attest that that is legit. That they are better at firing it. So that's not very. It took me out of it, Todd. The vagina ping pong was just not authentic to me, and it took me out of it. But the big highlight in these is you get to see Laura Gemser in a more cute, natural way. That's really the highlight. A lot of Mondo films, much like Nudie Cuties, they are very similar, and they do bleed together. Yeah. So
I feel like I can see her crying inside occasionally in this movie. Just Laura Gang like crying inside, like she's smiling but she's crying inside, you know.
I think
it's like
probably
one day of footage, one day of filming, one day of filming.
I think it was easier work for her though, because she's not having to do sex scenes really.
So. Yeah.
What do you think of this one, Todd?
For a Mondo movie and one of the later ones, I mean, it doesn't really, reinvent anything. So if you're in the mood for a Mondo movie, it's fine. I mean, not my go-to, but yeah.
It's a time capsule. For sure.
It is.
It's a time capsule, yeah.
Which most Mondos, really they are. But yeah. And this one, I think the fact that it comes later, I mean, if this would have come like 10 years earlier, would have been groundbreaking, but by the time the cycle's already ran its course.
Absolutely. So on the extras front on this one, we have Master of the World, a short 8-minute interview with Bruno Mattei. And he talks mostly about his co-directing productions with Joe D'Amato. That essentially is what he talks about in this.
That's very early in his career. I mean, that must have been right when he was starting, you know?
Yeah. He talked a little bit about Emanuelle and Francois, just his relationship in general with Joe D'Amato. We also get an 18-minute doc at the dining table, an interview with producer Franco Gendenzi, who also talks a little bit about everything. He does mention his working relationship with Antonio Margheriti, which was fun to hear about. And as I mentioned, the big highlight on this one is Naked Eye, Sex in the Mondo film. That's that documentary where, they kind of give a good rundown on the Mondo. And they also talk about Let Me Die a Woman, the Doris Wishman film, which was very controversial because transgender people were not often shown in movies or Mondo's documentaries. That's a very historical film. Also discusses the nudist camp films and really great piece. One of my favorite extras on this whole set. And yeah, and they also, what I thought was really cool, they also talk about the American Mondo run, which was kind of short because we were going into the porno chic era where you had films like Deep Throat and Behind the Green Door getting theatrical releases. So the need for the Mondo wasn't as strong at that point here, but adult films were still illegal in a lot of countries in Europe at that time. So there was so there was still kind of that need for the Mondo to fill. And
in the 80s in the UK, when I first saw porn, it was illegal to show penetrative sex.
Yeah.
So most porn in the UK just had this terrible fake sex. You could just tell it was fake because the woman's legs were kind of close together and the guy's like lying on top of this really bizarre fake sex in British porn films. I never forget when I went on holiday to the continent and saw actual porn, people having sex. Oh my God, look at this, you know. This is what sex looks like.
And you stayed here for how long after?
Yeah, and a lot of people will watch these and say, like, why not just watch an adult film? And it's like, well, not everybody had that option back then. So,
well, yeah, and I mean, these are a lot more than just like you know, like material to masturbate to. You know, I mean, there's too much 70s bush in it for me to find a lot of really sexy anyway, because there's a lot of bush, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's slightly different because it's erotica, you know. It's like sex-based art rather than pornography, like, which I don't think people understand now. There is a difference between erotica and porn. Because erotica has some artistic merit. Like, you can look at, like, the Emanuelle movies and they're beautifully fucking shot, you know. Like, you know, the people have looked and they want to make the movie look good. They got great soundtracks, you know. There's actual care going into them, you know, which doesn't exist in pornography, you know.
It doesn't now, for sure. When you go to that golden era, and this doc also has pieces on Gerard Damiano and Alex Terenzi, who kind of spills over into the adult world a little bit. Changes is a great film that Gerard Damiano did that I believe Vinegar Syndrome might have put out on a double feature at some point. I have to go back and look.
That would have definitely been DVD.
Yeah, I think it was. But yeah, no, at that time too, even the adult films early on, they had a story. You know, they really functioned as an actual film, unlike now for the most part, where it's it is what it is. So excellent, everything you could possibly want to know on the extra features here. So I know it's kind of hard to rate these, but what do you rate this one?
If I'm rating it just like even on the Mondo scale, I'm somewhere around a 3. I think
I'm over 3.
Yeah, I think it's better. It's definitely above average, but that could just be Laura Gemser in it too, is making a little bit better than some of the others. But yeah, I'm at a 3.
I give it a 3 as well. If you're a Laura Gemser fan, it's definitely worth watching it because again, you're seeing her in a different, more natural light. So,
and this was the first time I had seen this one. I'm not sure if I realized there were 2 films.
Well,
no, I thought they were the same movie. When I've seen that title in the past, I just thought, it's the same movie. They've just changed the.
Drop the Emanuelle and.
Yeah, it's tough because it's just Emanuelle and the Knights of the World. So
they're both shot in the same year too, right? They're both 78, I believe.
Technically, the first one was 77. This one's 78. The next one, but essentially, I'm sure shot back to back. It's a wave. I know, like actors who are involved in this would describe it as like, it might have been 6 or 7 years where you just felt like you were shooting one long movie because they were just one after the next.
Yeah.
So yes, the next one from 1978, also from Mattei and Joe D'Amato, Emanuelle and the Porto Knights of the World, also known as Emanuelle and the Erotic Knights in some areas. And this film also a Mondo, Emanuelle hosts, and it's a look into the bizarre and perverse sexual encounters, fantasies, and rituals from around the world. And this one goes a little bit harder in terms of some of the gore. There's a penis enlargement operation.
Yeah, I had to like just jump that little bit. That was too much for me. I didn't know whether it was a fake penis enlargement operation or a real one, but I once saw a penis operation, like someone's getting a penis turned into a vagina or something. I saw like fucking 5 seconds of it and I almost passed out. That's beyond my I can't deal with that. Penis surgery. It's too much. Castration by cannibals, I'm fine with, but when it's surgery and it might be real, no, I'm like, no.
I'm with you.
I think this one might be of more interest to people because this does have a little bit more of the nastiness. Unfortunately, it does have some animal cruelty too, with the pig being bludgeoned.
Yes, and is there a chicken getting his head cut off as well?
I believe so. Yeah, this one has a little bit more of that, so it kind of feels a little bit more like a traditional Mondo in some ways. The tribal wedding is where the pig stuff is. It's not focused on very long, but it is there. But also a lot of comedy again. I mean, we get a Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. Orgy.
The glory holes, the butt glory holes, just so surreal, I mean, it's amazing. Sometimes you watch Joe D'Amato's sex scenes, and it's amazing to be actually shot real porn because sometimes with his fake sex scenes, you're like, you actually ever seen people having sex? Because when they're getting supposedly sex with these glory holes, the expression of the women is just so strange. Like they're just kind of so casual and not.
You must have told him that something else was happening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just stand here.
Yeah, this one has like a medieval black mass ceremony.
I did enjoy the black mass. Yeah, that was enjoyable.
Yeah, that was fun. There's a dark ride where they're going through a dark ride and there's these dicks flying at them. And,
that was
like a kind of ghost train, like a penis ghost train.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it was.
It's what it made me think of, like a ghost train I went on when I was a kid, at the fair. Just big set with penises.
Yeah, this also has an appearance from Jess Franco regular Ajita Wilson. Who is a fairly famous trans actress at the time. It was kind of a bit of a secret, not among the directors. The directors knew, but she, a lot of the performers with her did not know. I know Lena Rome spoke really highly of her through different interviews back in the day. She's not in this very long, but yeah, she was pretty groundbreaking. I know she passed away. There's certainly more graphic and realistic Mondo films that show more of the surgical stuff, but this one's pretty light other than those few moments of the animal stuff and the surgery. Like I said, dark rides, Lady Godiva, throwing carnival games where you're throwing beanbags to win a blow-up doll. Like it's all pretty light.
Some of the scenes are long. I mean, I would warn people. If you're not familiar with Mondo scenes and you're trying to introduce yourself to Black Emanuelle, I wouldn't recommend this film because it is some of the scenes go on are not interesting and they go on for a long time. You know,
they do. Yeah, they do. And I always say Mondo films in general, you can. I mean, there's some that are better than others, but you're going to know pretty quick whether it's
like the taxi mom scene goes on for too long, in my opinion. You know, because it's like very fake looking, and the daughter looks like she's 30 as well. Yeah. You know, but it just goes on too long because nothing's really happening. You know.
Yeah, I mean, Faces of Death, although not a traditional Mondo necessarily, the Mondo is really dead at that point. But for horror fans, I'd say like check that out. As wild as it seems, I mean, people grew up when I was growing up. That was considered real. A lot of people thought it was real. Which,
Well, that's how it was. So I thought it was real when I first saw it. You know.
Yeah,
and again, it was on such copied tapes because it was banned. It made it look more real because you couldn't see everything was so fucking scratchy. You couldn't see the obvious, effects.
Yeah,
my thing was, and I remember this one. I was like, how did they get on different angles? That was the one thing that caught me, which makes sense now. My eye is an editor, but that's the one thing that like, how would they have multiple angles?
It depends how you experience the film. I mean, Charlie Sheen famously contacted the FBI because he thought one of the guinea pig films was a snuff film. I'm sure a lot of cocaine was involved in that, but still, you're not watching them all in crystal clarity. So yeah, in short, these are more niche, but worth checking out for sure.
I mean, it's the complete set, or as complete as I'm glad they're in there. I mean, not ones I throw on in my Emanuelle marathon if I'm doing the Black Emanuelle, movies. But I'm really glad they are included.
I am as well.
They're worth watching for sure. Yeah. And I mean, I'm always interested in seeing Bruno Mattei in his embryonic stage because he's just one of those directors that fascinates me. I tell you, I saw him in an interview and he goes, I never watch any of my films ever again. Once I made them, I never watch them again because they're shit. That's literally what shit, because they're shit. And I thought, Jesus, I've seen some of your films like 50, 60 times. What does that say about me?
Well, and Bruno Mattei also found a way to continue making films long after the Italian
He did.
film.
I was going to say, out of all of the Italian directors, he's the one whose very last few movies were actually good, was still up, well, by his standards. Like the last zombie movie he made, a couple of women in prison movies he made in the Philippines. I mean, they were actually pretty decent. But as good as anything he's made.
And tough to make genre films in Italy at that time. So, I mean, he continued into the 2000s.
Yeah, right into the 2000s. He went to, he started shooting in the Philippines again. Most of his movies were, he used the same actress, Filipino actress, for the 2 women in prison movies and the 2 zombie movies he made. The last zombie movies he made.
Yeah. So I give him a lot of credit, even though he didn't see it in himself. Joe D'Amato and Bruno Mattei always made an entertaining film.
Yeah. And I tell you, one of his movies that I think from an actual cinema, like outsider point of view is really great is SS Girls. Because it's such a fucking... It looks amazing. SS Girls is really well shot, and the set dressing is just so insane, and the story is so insane. For a start, for Nazi exploitation movie, it's a lot easier to watch than a lot of the others because it's Salon Kitty rather than set in a death camp.
Yeah.
But it really stands up well, SS Girls. The soundtrack, everything, the way it hangs together. I really think that's a great movie.
I agree. Check that one out. Yeah, on the extras front on this movie, we have Crazy World, a 14-minute interview with makeup artist Pietro Tenaglide. And this one's a pretty funny thing. He talks about a very obvious red-haired white girl doubling as the Thai girl in a black wig during the movie, which if you look closely is pretty obvious. He also talks about pulling the ping pong balls out by a string because she couldn't do it. He has some anecdotes about Ojeda Wilson, of course, the first major trans actress, arguably, and also a really funny story about the actor in the gorilla suit accidentally coming in the suit, which is pretty funny. Yeah, so definitely listen to that one. We also get After Hours. Now, this is a must watch because it's candid footage of director Joe D'Amato. It runs 12 minutes, and it's basically back at the hotel after a 1994 Eurofest convention. Just a couple of people that interviewed him in the hotel. It's very kind of personal, more intimate interview with him, of which there's only so many out there. He talks a little bit about his journey into hardcore films in the early 80s and the state of horror also at that time in 1994, where we had like Cemetery Man come out, which was great, but Italian horror was very much dead by the time you got to 1994. So,
it was, yeah.
Yeah, and this is a funny interview because they ask him, it's like, well, how hard is it to direct porn? And he just laughs and he's like, you just like call action, just fuck, make a blowjob, and that's about your direction in adult films. If you're a fan of Joe D'Amato, I highly recommend you watch it. It's 12 minutes, so not in depth or anything, but you see his sense of humor that everybody talks about, which is really, really cool. And what else do we have?
Trailer.
Yeah, trailer. And also, I should point out in this film, very popular Italian sex comedy star Gloria Guida is in this film. She was known for Monica, How to Seduce Your Teacher, Blue Jeans, a lot of Italian comedies at that time, among other things. She also makes an appearance in this
film. Who is she in this film?
You know what? I can't even remember now because these are bleeding together. I know she was one of the nightclub girls. I'd have to go back. She doesn't have a character name, unfortunately, because it's a
okay. Yeah.
But keep an eye out for her. She got quite popular. High school girl repeating class. A lot of those Italian sex comedies never even made it to DVD, let alone Blu-ray.
Yeah, there's something I've got to hunt down because Fulci made a few of them, and I want to see every movie Fulci's made, but I haven't actually got onto his sex comedies that he did.
Yeah, they were doing it long before our late 70s, 80s sex comedy wave in the U.S. So I say anything with Edwig Fenech, certainly. Todd.
Oh, yes.
Second that one for sure.
I love it. I love her, yeah.
So what do we rate this one, guys?
It's hard for me to give it anything other than a 3 also. They just go together, and I don't really have a preference.
I give it a 3 too,
I'll give this one a 3 as well. It's a good way to close it.
Yeah, 3 for me.
So, guys, be sure to tune in to our next episode where Emanuelle finds religion. If we get into,
yes, she does.
for a short time, anyways. We'll see you guys back here next time. Later.
Later.